Welcome to GenXAdulting. This is episode number 2. And today we're going to talk about how we were essentially kids when we started raising kids
Mm-hmm.
and talk about the different phases we went through throughout our lives with each child we had because they were very different
Oh yeah.
and how we grew up with our kids essentially to some
Mm-hmm.
degree.
Mm-hmm.
So we got married at 23, got pregnant at 25 and had Nathan. I was 26. You turned 26 like 4 months later or something like that,
Yeah, yeah.
if I remember correctly.
I
When we,
did marry an older woman.
yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. So when we had Nathan, we had nothing. We lived in a house that is probably as big as this room, I would think, if you
Mm-hmm.
could compare it.
Mm-hmm.
The kitchen was probably 4 by 2.
About as big as this area right here.
Yeah. Well, and if you're listening, about 4 by 2.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
And then it was the tiniest little house that we brought him home to. His crib was right there in the main room. You were working up until I had up until I had Nathan. I was working, but then once I had Nathan,
Mm-hmm.
I stayed home. So that's one thing I would advise before anyone decides to either get married or have children together is have that conversation about how you see each other's roles. You and I had that conversation
Mm-hmm.
really even before we got married. Actually, I think we talked about it when we were friends. We were friends for almost 3 years before we got together. And I feel like during that time we even had the conversation where I told you that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom because I didn't have that growing up. My
Mm-hmm.
mom was a single mom. She was working. I wanted to create the exact opposite experience for my own kids.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted the same thing, a wife who stayed home because that's
That's
essentially
what I had.
what you
I
had,
had a
what
mom
you
at
grew
home, yeah.
Right, right. So have that conversation. I can't stress that enough because then you're both on the same page before you get going on it.
Because when you start to have financial challenges or responsibility conversations, you want to fall back on that conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also talk about how you're going to see the money situation in
Mhm.
that because you never once made me feel like it was your money that you were giving
Mhm.
me. It was our money to build our life with. You had the privilege of pursuing your career and focusing on that 100% with the knowledge that everything was good at home and your children were being raised and you had no worries about the home front because I was home taking care of it.
Mhm.
So it worked both ways. You supported the family financially. I supported the family on the home front. So have that conversation. It
Yep.
will really help it helped us immensely.
It's honestly critical.
It's
We're
critical.
almost overemphasizing
Yes.
it at this point, but it is very critical.
It's-
You
it's-
do have to have that.
Yes. Have the
You have to be on
conversation.
the same page.
100%. Have the conversation. Do you both want kids?
Yeah.
That's important. And if somebody does not want children, that's not going to change.
Yeah.
And then have the conversation. How do you see the home front? That's how I like to think of it. How do you see the home front? How do you see the roles? So you and I had that established.
The other thing I would say too is do not do the ultimatum game. We've had some
No.
friends play the ultimatum
Yes.
game, which is if we're not engaged by this certain time, then I'm moving on.
Yes.
And then they jump into the marriage and it's over.
Right.
Those do not last. So don't play that game either.
Absolutely. I think it's one of those things, at least for my advice for young women or women in general. I shouldn't just say young women. Women in general who are in a relationship. My opinion is a man knows within a year if he's going to marry someone. If he goes too long, I don't know, in my opinion, if he goes past 3 years and hasn't asked you to marry him, you're a placeholder. You are not the one for
Yeah.
him. He's waiting to see if something comes along or if his person is going to come along. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I was thinking you might even know sooner as a guy, but I don't know if that's the case in all cases. I'm not saying it's love at first sight and you jump on that and decide to get married and elope like in that weekend type of thing, but you
Mhm.
know pretty quick, I think.
When do you honestly feel you knew that you wanted to marry me, that I was your person?
Oh God, I don't know. Because in some ways the theme of this conversation is kids raising kids.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We were kids.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't recall.
Would you say it was on our trip around the country after we graduated from high school? We drove around the country for
College,
2.5.
college.
I'm sorry. After we graduated from college, thank you. We drove around the country for 2.5 months. Would you say it was during that trip, or would you say it was? Then we moved in together.
Well, I think yeah. I mean, it probably around during that time.
Yeah.
You know, you spend 3 months in the car with someone
Yeah.
driving around the place, and a lot,
Yeah.
you know, it's you get a feel for whether you're compatible or not, and if you like each other.
Right.
You have to like each other before you can love each other, right?
100%.
So I think we got through that unscathed, and we still liked each other.
Yes.
So there was definitely large potential.
Yes. I think we talked every day on that trip nonstop. We brought the tapes that are hanging above you. We brought those in my car.
Yeah.
He's got, I don't know how many bootleg Grateful Dead tapes.
They're above me. We'd have to zoom out.
Yeah, but it's fine. But
there they are.
They're above. Yeah. But so we brought most of those thinking we would listen to them because my car at the time had a cassette player because this was 1994. No, 1993. This was 1993. The map above me says Road Trip 93. So we planned, there's a map above me and it says Road Trip 93.
Yeah, for those who are not watching,
Yes.
we're in a room here we're in opposing chairs. Above me is a set of about 200 and something Grateful Dead cassette tapes, a bunch, handwritten covers and things like that. They're bootlegs. And then above Nicole is a map of the U.S. that says Road Trip 93.
Which we are going to track.
Yeah, we did a real good road trip starting in Ashland, Oregon, and went all across the northern part of the U.S. over to the East Coast, and then looped back around through the South. We'll go through that someday. It was a lot of fun.
We'll do a podcast on that. We're actually going to track it and then talk about it. But so we brought the tapes, but we only used a few because we talked every day for 2.5 months in that car as we traveled. That was a first clue to me that, okay, something's here, and then I just knew you were my person. But like to go back to about men, I think that men know. And if you go too long as a woman, you don't, I tell my daughter, don't give away your baby ears to a man. It's more vital for a woman is on a time clock here. So, obviously give it some time, but know when to walk away for yourself. Anyways, that's my little bit of advice there. So we drove around the country. We lived together for a year. During that year, you asked me to marry you in May.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got married in September in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
That was a blast. And we were 23. And then we moved to Michigan, lived in Michigan for about a year, moved back to Oregon, and then got pregnant with Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
And
we actually didn't even make it a year in Michigan.
Was it just shy of a year?
Well, what's crazy, if you've ever lived in that area, Michigan, we were in the Detroit area. It snowed on Halloween.
Yeah.
There was a foot of snow on Halloween. There was still snow on the ground on Easter.
Yes.
And we're like, we got to get the hell out of here. It's just too cold.
It's
beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Michigan's a wonderful state. Or used to be. I don't know. It seems a little nutty now, but it's still a beautiful state.
Well, it's still beautiful.
Yeah. It was cold, like really cold.
It's a Canada cold.
Yeah. There is an Arctic cold.
Yes.
For sure.
But so we moved back to Portland and got pregnant with Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
We were 25. We were renting at the time. We had already rented, an apartment in Portland. We rented a home in Michigan, and we rented then this little home in Portland and had Nathan and brought him home to this teeniest, tiniest little house.
Yep.
I remember every Christmas I make, dozens and dozens and dozens of Christmas cookies of at least 8 different types of cookies.
Were you doing it then too?
Yeah, I still did it in that little tiny kitchen.
That kitchen was literally, you could not have 2 people in there.
No.
And at one end of it, so picture a rectangle, maybe the size of like a crib mattress.
Yeah.
Right? It was probably about that.
Yeah.
And at one end of the crib was the fridge, which was small.
Yes.
Then there was um,
Tiny
a
sink
tiny sink.
and a tiny oven, like a half
Yeah,
oven.
like a little oven.
I made
And
all those cookies there, and they were drying on racks and stuff around the little house that we had. Anyway, so I had worked up until having Nathan.
mhm,
Really, up until I think I stopped working maybe a week before I had him, if that. And then we had Nathan, and I stayed home.
yep.
We had no money except for what you brought in. You were
Mhm.
working two jobs then. You were working at the greenhouse.
I might have been just the greenhouse at that point.
You worked at a wholesale greenhouse company.
Yeah. Yep.
And then you got the job at the phones, right? Calling people.
I think I was
Oh
no,
no,
I think
that
I
was
went I
earlier. That
went
was
2
earlier.
jobs. I had the
Yes.
phones and the greenhouse, the nursery job. Then we moved to Michigan. Then
Yes.
we came back and got sort of a promo, I guess, a promotion, um, moving back
Yeah.
and worked my ass off. But um, eventually, there's just there's not a ton of money in that. So then I got into IT.
But when we moved back, you went back to work at the wholesale greenhouse.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
100%. Yeah,
And then you got into IT.
yeah,
And then right at the beginning, right? Like you were what doing what at the very start of IT?
yeah. Back then, if you're younger than Gen X, you may not remember this, but we used to connect to the internet through phone lines and modems. So US West, which I don't even think US West is around
My
anymore.
gosh, I forgot about
Right,
US
they're out of
West.
business.
Yes.
Um, I was working doing tech support for dial-up customers, their internet customers.
Mm-hmm.
So people who could not connect to the internet, we talked them through how to get connected.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, that was very, very early on, even pre.com. That was what year was that?
90 he was born in 97.
Yeah, 97. So again, time stamping ourselves or dating ourselves, it was Windows 3.1
Mm-hmm.
and then Windows 95 came out
Mm-hmm.
and Windows 98 came out. And that was really the start of the internet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were there right from the start.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I should mention when we lived in Michigan, my dad bought you your first computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that thing was one of those big boxy.
It was actually a Pentium 90 with either 4 or 8 gigs of memory.
Yeah.
Had floppy drives. But it was fast back then. I think I had a 17-inch monitor that was like the size of the old TVs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So then when did you start working two jobs? Was it in Portland? Or were you only working the
No,
one? I thought you worked two jobs when we were in Portland.
No, that US West gig was decent in the scheme of things for back then, because it was an outsourced gig. So I worked for a company called Stream who
Mm-hmm.
was doing all the support for US West.
Mm-hmm.
And they had tons of overtime opportunities. So I don't know if you remember, but I would go in I got to the point where I'd do 4 10-hour days, but then each day there was always overtime. So I could work like another
Yes.
4 hours.
Yes.
I'm like working 14 hours a day,
Yes.
4 days a week type of thing.
And
it was fine.
And I would be with Nathan.
Yeah.
I mean, right when I had Nathan, I think you had a week. It was a big deal. You had a week off with me because you were working so much. So you were off with me for a week. Then you went back to work. You were gone a lot. I was with Nathan. And then we moved into a bigger rental.
Yeah.
And I did a little daycare.
Yeah.
There. You set up a whole playground in the back. You had a huge garden.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I watched some kids.
Yep.
And then we decided right before Nathan turned 2. So this was right as it turned 1999, or right before.
Yeah.
So right at the end of 1998, we drove to New Jersey and moved to the town where you grew up.
Yeah.
And probably why we did that at the time is because we both wanted a smaller town atmosphere to raise our children. Portland was feeling like it was getting a little too much of.
Now I'll nail this one.
Okay.
For me personally.
He wants to say.
But no, I mean, Portland was becoming a drug culture. Portland was always pretty liberal, right? Obviously, right?
Yes.
It's liberal.
Yes.
You don't become what it is today overnight.
Right.
But
it wasn't what it is now when I was growing up
No,
there. I'd
no.
like to clarify that.
We actually hit Portland personally for me, not being from there. I felt like, hey, well, Portland's a pretty cool town, right?
Yeah.
They had the Brewers Fest and good music scene. It was safe. You can go downtown Portland at 2 or 3 in the morning and no problems.
Mm-hmm.
But meth became an epidemic back
Mm-hmm.
then, right? Meth hadn't really been on the scene, and it moved in, and Portland was sort of an epicenter
Mm-hmm.
of it. The West Coast, the Pacific Northwest,
Yeah.
it's full of meth heads. So it's no place to raise a kid.
No.
So for me, it was very simple. We're not raising a kid in this environment. It's fine if you're in your 20s, 30s, whatever. Dual income, no kids, no harm, no problem, right? But once you have kids, I wasn't cool with it.
We weren't comfortable with it.
No.
So we moved out to New Jersey, and
Really quick, do you remember the ride there?
Yeah.
We did it in the middle of the winter.
Yes.
Rented a U-Haul or a Ryder. I think it was a Ryder truck.
Yeah.
Loaded up the two of us
Yeah.
and 2 dogs.
Yes.
Remember, we had the dog sitting at our feet.
Yes.
And driving across country in the middle of the winter.
Well, no, we didn't have Karma. She passed away right before we left.
Oh, that's right. So we just had Mocha.
We just had Mocha.
Yeah, okay. Do you remember the oil filter or the fuel filter got clogged and we got stuck in Wyoming?
Yes.
That was fun.
Was that on the way to New Jersey?
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah, because we had a kid. We're like,
Yes.
this is going crazy.
Yes, it was cold. It was treacherous. It was a little sketchy at times, crossing bridges. Because we were driving through the whole northern part
Route
of
80.
the country. Yeah. So we made it with all of our stuff and then lived with your parents for a year.
Yep.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
You know, we had that landing pad. And did you have a job when we went out there already?
I did. I can't remember. Did we do Christmas in New Jersey that year?
We must have arrived before Christmas.
Because I went and interviewed at a local ISP, Net Access, actually.
Net Access.
I met with them over that break when we were visiting. I got offered the job, and then we moved back, packed our shit up, and moved.
So, what did you do at Net Access?
Very similar stuff. Started in their what do we call it? The Technical Support Center, or the Technical Assistance Center. Same thing. Net Access was an ISP at the time, a local ISP. So now, you know, it's a fascinating thing because a lot of these ISPs are gone.
Mm-hmm.
ISP stands for Internet Service Provider.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's all. If you're in the Northeast, you probably have Comcast or Verizon.
Mm-hmm.
Down here, we have AT&T or Comcast.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, it was all smaller companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was all these regional entrepreneurs who set up ISPs, and basically it was you got what's called an ISDN line that connected to the internet, and people would call in on their dial-up connections, and you'd get connected to the internet. And again, it was supporting those people. Wasn't the most reliable technology, right? It's almost like fax line type of stuff. But it was, you know, so I started in that. And then as time went on, I moved into the NOC, which is the Network Operations Center, dealing with, you know, just higher sophisticated things or more technical things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
this was all at Net Access.
Yeah.
And did you only work at Net Access at that time when we were living with your parents? You were just working at Net Access, right?
I was, but that's the time, and this would be my career advice to people. When you're young, you do what I guess I'm about to say, but remember, I would work, I think I had to be at work at like 9 or 9:30, and it was half an hour away or so. So I'd leave the house half an hour before, go work, and then come home, and I would stay up till 2, 3 in the morning, teaching myself everything I was doing at work, really. And at the end of the day, what I was teaching myself was how the internet works, how to networking, routing, switching, DNS, domain name services, how to set up mail servers, how to set up FTP servers, everything related to how the internet worked and how to connect computers and servers and workstations and people to the internet and broader networks.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know what you asked me, but that's what I was doing.
Yeah. Well, I asked you if
I had one job.
you were working
I
two
had
jobs.
one job. But the second was almost night school, my own personal night school.
Right. So the second job I would say was teaching yourself. And to your point, when you're young, especially if you don't have a spouse or children, Definitely grind. Definitely burn the candle at both ends. This is the time to do it. We did get married young, and you had a responsibility for a family at a
Yeah.
very young age. So you were more than motivated because you had to be.
Now, if I will pause there, if there's anyone younger listening, or even a Gen Xer who's looking for a career change, the move now would be teach yourself Python, Golang, how Azure works, how AWS works, really how to code. That you know, you hear that a lot. Like,
Yes.
teach yourself how to code and you'll be fine. It's kind of true to a point. A lot of that's getting offshored, but if you know how it works, you can manage it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyways,
No, that's good advice. So you were working your butt off.
mm-hmm.
I was raising Nathan, and we were saving money.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got pregnant again while we were living with your parents. I got pregnant with Kaya. And I believe you took a new job around that time too.
I did.
And where did you go from there?
A company called GTriad,
Mm-hmm.
which was a kind of a .com startup that a larger company, Computer Horizons, bought. They're both out of business.
Yeah.
Which is wild. But yeah, so GTriad, we managed the web infrastructure for various companies like ToysRUs.com,
Mm-hmm.
Dow Jones University, Amex had some sites that we managed. Yeah, it was pretty cool. That
yeah.
was like pretty high end stuff. And the way it kind of worked, GTriad had a development arm. We had developers who would develop websites and applications in a application server called Cold Fusion. We handled the web server side of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and with that new position, you had a salary raise. This is how it works.
Yeah. Okay.
As you're building your career.
A little more career advice, I guess.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you can job hop a little bit. You probably need to. Yeah. I mean, I started in tech support, which pays shit.
Mm-hmm.
Just do it so you learn, but teach yourself more. And then, yeah, to your point, I took this next gig and then became a manager.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to make some money, right? You get mid-level management type of stuff.
Right. But from that mid-level management,
mm-hmm.
we were able to purchase our first home.
Yeah.
So we purchased our first home. I was pregnant while we're painting the walls inside and getting the home ready. We had friends and family helping us, and we moved in.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe a few months later, we had Kaya, our daughter.
Yeah.
And so I was 29. And you were 29 as well, because this was in November. So we were both 29. So we had 2 kids before we were 30, and you were still building your career. I was home still. Nathan was starting preschool, and we just kind of hummed along in New Jersey, raising our kids, doing Nathan started Little League or T-ball.
Mm-hmm.
Kaya came to all the stuff because she was the younger sibling. We spent time with family. It was where you grew up, so we were involved in the community.
Yep.
And then did you accept another position during that time from GTriad, or were you at GTriad that entire time?
Well, so during that time, the .com bust happened, 2001. So it was a very interesting time. I think I went through the Y2K stuff.
Yes.
At Net Access.
Well, as a side note, could you share when 9/11 happened, what you were asked to do?
Where was I at that? I think I was at GTriad. Yeah, I was at Computer Horizons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty wild.
A quick 9/11 story, because everyone has one. So I was getting Nathan ready to go to preschool, I think. I had Kaya in my arms and looked at the TV and saw the second plane hit the second tower. You called me.
I think the plane had hit. The first plane had hit.
No one saw that. That wasn't filmed. Well, it was filmed by a few home videos,
but I remember.
The news didn't.
I remember leaving, getting ready, and it hit, and it's like, wow.
You were on your way to work, and you called me. You turned around
it and then said, "I'm going in," because I didn't think it was not a big deal, right? The first plane hit, and then it was not a big deal.
Oh,
and then
okay.
I got to the office.
Okay, yes.
The next plane hit, and I remember being in the office, and everyone's like, "Wow, what the fuck is going on?
Right.
And um
And then
there was some kind of that semblance of, okay, what's happening? And then I left. I
you
went
came
home.
back home.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
everybody was, and we had our own place, but my parents' place was half a mile away or whatever.
We all went there.
We all went
It was
there.
your dad's
And,
birthday.
yeah, and watched the news and kind of freaked out.
Absolutely. And then what were you asked to do?
So we had a contract at the time with or at least contacts with the FDNY, New York Fire Department, and we were asked and volunteered. I didn't get paid for this. I don't think any of us got paid for it. I don't even think our company got paid for this. But we went in and set up Pier 94 in New York. And what Pier 94 was at the time is basically, if you picture the Hudson, not the Hudson, probably the East River or whatever there's on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
I know the Hudson. I don't know what the other river is. It might be the East River or something like that. But the Pier 94 was a big kind of a warehouse. As ships would come in, I think normal stuff would get put in there or something. I don't even know. But either way, when we got there, we set up all the computer systems and phone systems for the DNA collection effort, I guess you'd call it.
Well, because at the time,
well, what went down there is this is back when Giuliani was mayor too, because I remember him rolling in. This is Giuliani before he became whatever he is now, but he was a great mayor in New York at the time. It was interesting. He showed up and just had this presence larger than life, right?
Yeah.
Just a celebrity. Either way, we set up different, they were curtained off rooms, and probably a couple hundred of them with a computer and a phone in each one. So we built out the network, we connected everything. And if you had a loved one or a missing person, and people were bringing bags of, like, say, toothbrushes or hairbrushes and combs and anything that had their loved one's DNA on it. And it was so premature, though, in so many ways, but it was just this reaction. Everyone came together, right?
Yeah.
Everyone came together. We built out Pier 94 and I don't even know. I was gone, for like a day and a half.
Oh, you were gone for almost over 2 days.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Maybe 3 days. You were gone.
Yeah, we went in,
Yeah.
and then the flash, you do all this stuff, and everyone was grinding. But when I say it was premature, because the building was still smoldering.
Yeah.
Right. There was still that plume of smoke, and shit was just still on fire, probably very deep in the earth.
They were still searching for survivors.
And they hadn't, finding people. They probably found people, but we were there within, I guess, 48 hours setting that up.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
If not sooner.
What's interesting, though, about that is when we first went in, coming from New Jersey, you go through the Lincoln Tunnel. And back in the day, there was tolls, and there's probably tolls again, but they stopped everything this time, right?
Of
So
course.
now we're like, it's fresh. But they waved us right in. It's very interesting. So I remember them opening trucks, having them open the back and look inside and stuff. But as we rolled in, we obviously didn't look like bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
And they just looked at us and waved us right in.
They profiled.
It was a
you.
trip.
Yeah,
it was very interesting. And that was obviously pre 9/11, or within 2 days of 9/11, the world's changed.
Mm-hmm.
We're completely spied on at this point.
Right.
They know everything. They being the government and the intelligence agencies back then, they probably knew, but who knows, right? I'm not getting into conspiracy level shit.
Let's not go there.
No. But I'm
It's
just
another
saying
podcast.
it was just very interesting that we did not get a full security shakedown.
Right.
It was easier to go through the Lincoln Tunnel 2 days after 9/11 than it is to board an airplane today.
Right. Right. I remember you telling me also a story related to 9/11, and then we'll move on. You were supposed to have a meeting with Lego on 9/11.
Yeah.
And you had switched it to 9/12.
Yeah. No, it's an amazing thing. It's my procrastination worked out pretty well. Not that anything would have happened, but I would have gone through World Trade Center subway, I would have taken the path from probably from might have gone into like Jersey City instead of I've done that. It would have been a follow up meeting. So prior to that, I would go to Jersey City, catch the path, take it right over to the Midtown Manhattan and into the World Trade Center.
Mm-hmm.
There's a massive train station there. It's a shame because I don't know what it's like anymore, but back then it was like I remember my first time doing this, and the escalator was like, you go to a mall, it's like what, 30, 40, I don't know, 50 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
These things were like 200 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would have gone in and it would have been right at that time, would have been around 9ish.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy did go to something. I don't know who he was meeting with, but he got off the train in the World Trade Center and felt the ground shake and heard a big bang, hopped back on the path and got the hell out of there. So he got very lucky.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
And I would assume that would have probably been my fate as well.
I don't know. Knowing you always want to know what's going on. So I think you would have stayed and seen
it's hard to tell.
You have a huge amount of curiosity about pretty much everything. So I think you would have stayed to see what was going on. So anyway, during that time, you said Y2K.
Yeah.
You were with G Triad. Is that the company that went in? And then did you change companies after that?
Yeah, I went to Allied.
Right.
Yeah, Allied
Right.
Office Products.
And that was another career move, right?
Yep.
So did you move from manager? Did you get a new title when you went to Allied?
I was the VP of IT infrastructure.
Okay.
And honestly, that goes back to like, you got to teach yourself things, right? So again, career advice for anybody is don't just be a one trick pony. You got to learn different things about whatever you're interested in. You go for it. So I mean, that moved on from just networking to all of the infrastructure. So servers and big IBM refrigerator sized servers and mainframe type of systems, and then warehouse systems and the computers that everybody uses and the printers and the fax machines and the phone lines and all that stuff.
So you working there allowed us to continue to live a nice life. I was able to stay home as the two kids grew up in Sparta. Kaya started playing softball. Nathan was playing Little League. You were coaching. With the nice thing, you were still working so hard, that you'd be gone. I think sometimes you left because where you worked was, I want to say, an hour to an hour and a half each direction. And so sometimes you would leave before the kids got up, and then you would get home right as I was reading them a bedtime story. This was like Monday through Thursday and Friday. But then Friday you'd come home and you were home.
Yeah.
And you made that Friday, Saturday, Sunday big time family time. Nothing against guys who golf, but you weren't golfing. You were home on the Saturdays. You didn't go to the bars with the guys. You were a family man, and that was our values. Now everybody makes their own decisions. Everybody has their own way of working things out. This is what worked for us. So you would be home. You coached Nathan's Little League. You coached, I think you helped coach Kaya's softball. And then
I don't think she was playing softball yet.
She played one year of softball in New Jersey. Remember, she after a game is when she caught her cleat in the stairs at the playground and cut her under her chin.
Yep.
And needed stitches. But you were there on the weekends for them. And then if they did have a game during the week, you did make it. Sometimes you were late to a game.
Yep.
I remember you'd come in late to games, but you were there as much as you could be.
Yeah.
But Monday through Friday, I kind of felt like a single mom. You did start traveling.
Yep.
You had teams all over the world. And so I did.
That was a totally different gig, but.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was still the same company though, right?
No, we got bought out, and that's when we moved down here.
Okay. So I'm jumping ahead. So you were working really hard, still building your career. I'm on the home front.
Yep.
And then Nathan's in 4th grade. Kaya is in kindergarten, and your company was bought out by a company down here in Florida.
Yeah. Yep.
And we looked at each other and had long talks.
Yep.
and decided this was the best move for your career,
Yep.
which would be the best move for our family.
Yep.
So I didn't want the kids to.
Well, at the time too, right? So the housing crisis of
Yes,
2007 was
yes,
happening.
we're at 2007 now. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that was pretty dodgy, you know, in some ways, because the company I was working at sold, moved, and I never thought we would live in Florida.
Never.
Florida was sort of laughing stock material, right? Any weird stories or any,
I think to a lot of people it still is.
yeah. So you hear about weird shit, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's probably Florida.
Right.
But no, Florida's turned the corner, quite frankly. Now it's like weird shit is happening elsewhere.
True.
It's not as, you know, there's still some good stuff down here.
Oh yeah.
You know,
It's still very much Florida.
yeah.
But yeah, you're right. So the housing crisis was happening and we needed to look ahead. And I guess that's another thing for people that are younger building their career. Sometimes you're going to get thrown a curveball. Things are not always going to stay on the same path that you think they are. The trajectory of your life could change in an instant for many reasons, but one of them is a job change.
Yeah.
And you will have to move your family because that's the best thing. We moved away from grandparents,
Yeah.
aunts, uncles, cousins. Our children were very close with their cousins. They still are, thank God.
Yeah.
But they were very close. It was a brutal decision. The kids did not want to move. I didn't want to move them in the middle of the school year. So you moved down here in January,
Yep.
lived down here, and flew home almost every weekend to see us. Yep. And then we did that up until we moved in.
Well, we waited till the end of the school year.
The end of the school year. So we moved end of June, beginning of July.
Yeah.
We moved down here.
I remember moving, when we moved here, moving our stuff in, and we rented. When we came down here, we sold our house. Actually, we didn't sell our house. That's a whole other story.
Yes.
But moving in like July, the middle of July, it felt like the sun was literally 5 feet above your head. We've acclimated since, but man,
100%.
that was crazy.
We had never experienced a heat like that.
No.
So we moved. We rented for a while we got to know the area, and then we eventually bought our own home here.
Yeah.
And like you said, it took us a while to sell our house in New Jersey because of the housing crisis. So we've been through.
That was terrible.
We've been through a housing crash.
Yeah.
We had people coming in from other states and they were offended by what we were selling our house for, but in New Jersey that was normal. So that was rough as people would be shocked, but what you sell a house for Texas at that time was much less than what you sell for in New Jersey. So we went through a lot of that. I think it took over a year to sell our house.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that. The challenge at the time was selling a home anywhere was tough. And then to want to buy a home was equally as unnerving, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember living down here and driving through the streets we drive through now, the neighborhoods, and you could literally, every home on the block was for sale. Not literally, but you know what I mean? As you look down and you would see for rent, for lease, or for rent, for sale, or for closure.
Yes.
Right? Which was really just sucked. But yeah, our house, we sat on that house for the whole winter. It was super cold winter. Heating oil prices were up, so we had to pay for snow removal, heat the house so it wouldn't, it had to be heated.
Yes. Lights had to stay
on. A very
on.
expensive year.
It was a very expensive year. And so finally we sold the house. We got settled here with the kids. They started a new school. This is all part of building a life together, right? I found my advice to people when you're moving, find the school first, then look for your home, which I did. I did not want to spend most of my life driving in a car from my house to the school to the house. So I found the school first, then we found the house.
I would say that's actually that's sage advice. I didn't know that. You were like, we've got to live near the school.
Yeah.
And you found the school.
It's key.
And it was key because it worked out. And the school was good. It was close to our house. And now you're in a community. And that is, especially when the kids were the ages they were, that was pretty big.
First grade, they were first grade and fifth grade.
Mm-hmm.
So we hum along. They get involved in sports. I get settled in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's going great. And then at the age of
so good.
Everything was just humming along. But life was about to get better.
Yeah.
Because I popped up pregnant, I want to say at the age of 38. And God just felt, in my opinion, that our family was not complete.
I'm far more scientific about it, but
and gave us our bonus baby, Dylan. And so we were all kind of like, what? So for the people that that happens to, I'm here to say everything's going to be fine. At the moment you panic, because again, your life was headed in one certain direction, and now it's completely going in another direction, and it's like, what are we doing? What are we going to do? Da 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 da. It's all going to be fine. And better. It's going to be better than what you ever could have imagined, and you can't imagine.
Well, it is just what it is. But you start to not know any other life.
Yeah, you couldn't imagine it any other way.
Yeah.
So at 39, I had Dylan, and you were still 38, I think. No, I had Dylan at 38 and turned 39 a couple months later. You were still 38 for a little bit longer. So we had a new baby. So our Nathan was 13 years older than him, or is 13 years older than him. Nathan was 13. Kaya was 10. So it was exciting for them to have this little baby, exciting for us. You know, we were heading into our 40s and starting all over. And ironically, I think a month before I got pregnant with Dylan, we had a garage sale, and I had gotten rid of, other than the sentimental stuff that I was keeping, I sold or got rid of all of the toys of Nathan and Kaya's. And then I got pregnant. So now I don't get rid of anything. I keep it all in a storage unit, all of Dylan's toys, everything.
The one downside.
What's that? Yeah. I'm saving it for our grandchildren.
Semi-professional hoarders at this point.
Well, it's organized, but for our grandchildren, God willing. But so we had Dylan. And what's interesting about where we were at when we had Dylan, you look back on where we were with Nathan, bringing him home to a little teeny shack.
Yeah.
And then with Kaya, first time homeowners, we didn't even have living room furniture for like, I think a good 3 months in that house. Cause we were, all the money was going towards buying the house and getting set up. It took us a while.
Well, we had furniture. It just wasn't new.
No, the upstairs part, we didn't have furniture there for a while. Remember, we had it downstairs, and then finally we got furniture. We didn't have furniture off the dining room for a while.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I do. So it took that we weren't totally established, but then with Dylan, we were, you were at a place in your career. We were established, and more than established, he was coming home to siblings. Yeah. My mom, thank God, moved down here when we did. So there is a grandparent down here, or there was with him. She's still here. So to go from, to just watch the phases throughout raising the kids, where we were, what was going on in our life, and what we needed to do to get to that point of feeling, because the company that bought out and moved you down here, you're still with.
Yeah.
And thank God that's been a great experience, and that's continued to allow us to have a wonderful lifestyle for the kids and allowed me to stay home. But again, it started in a little tiny shack with no money.
So what's funny is,
to be clear.
So think about this too. And I still have this bike, but I bought the bike.
Yes.
And I used to ride my bike when we first had Nathan, lived in a little shithole shack about the size of this room. I would ride my bike along the biker's path along I-205 in South Portland or Southeast Portland.
Yeah.
So I'd ride my bike to work, back and forth. And then when we had Kaya, my commute was 35 miles. I worked 10 miles outside of New York.
Yes.
But that was like an hour to an hour and a half or more, depending on
each way,
yeah, which sucked, which really lends itself to why I wasn't around as much.
Absolutely.
Right? So
you
want to leave before traffic starts, and then you wait till traffic ends. And now before you know it, you're in a 12-hour day.
Right.
One nice thing about here is I'm 6.2 miles from the office, and it's a left, right.
Yes.
Huge quality of life difference. And
huge.
I emphasize that because it's huge. You don't want to work too close, or you don't want to live too close to where you work because you need separation. but you do want to be pretty close. You want to
Yes,
minimize your commute
if possible.
if possible. Yeah.
We've lived all of those experiences, and
Yeah.
by far
Yep.
the best one, of course, for you and for the family.
100%.
And I would
Yeah.
say another area where Dylan has a very different experience is Nathan and Kaya, when they were young, grew up with you not around during the week for the reasons you just stated.
Mhm.
You've been around and for almost like constantly for
Yeah.
Dylan. You've been home for dinner. You would see him before he goes to school. He's
Yep.
never known you not around. Now, to go back to the traveling, when you took this job with this existing company, you were traveling when we were living towards the end of New Jersey.
Yep.
And then when we first were living here.
Yep.
So the kids also went through, and I went through, they went through having a dad who travels. I went through having a husband who travels.
Mhm.
Once the market really started getting bad, your company stopped all that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, but even, I think that went on for what, 2 years
At least a year.
or a year?
Yeah. It was fun though.
It was fun for you, yes.
Yeah.
No, and it's nice you got to see the world, but I will say it's a different world for a wife and a mother.
Yeah.
And it's a different world for the children. And again, if anyone is in that situation just starting out, keep that in mind. You know, it's going to be a different lifestyle. Good, could work for you, could not.
Yeah.
But it's a very different lifestyle. Many people live it.
Yeah.
You know, ours didn't last. It would have kept going if the market hadn't, you know.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, the other thing too is COVID. Now, obviously,
Well,
all
that's
the kids
much
are
later.
a little older. Yeah,
Yeah.
but COVID changed things too. A lot of guys that would be in sales that would travel just to travel
Yeah.
and go, get customer touches. A lot of, that stopped a lot of that.
Yeah.
And it's still going on today.
Well, COVID's a whole nother thing. I mean, you worked close to us, so you were around. But then once COVID hit, you were working from home, and then
Yeah.
your company allowed your team. So you've been home ever since COVID.
Yeah.
So that changed my life.
Yeah. For the better, I assume. Yeah.
Depending on the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess another one, something that I would say, whether it was Nathan, whether it was Kaya, or whether it was Dylan, something that we did with all three that's vital is create open communication with them. And that starts as young as preschool. And the way it starts, if I can give anybody advice on that, is when you pick them up from preschool or you see them at the end of the day, you ask simple questions of, what was your snack today?
Mm-hmm.
What did you color today? What did you do on recess? Little questions like that. Then when you get into elementary school with them, it gets into bigger questions, like they tell you who's being mean to them, or what the grade they got on a test. Middle school, they're still, even though it's different, that communication has been established. Even if it's like pulling teeth, they still will tell you. One thing I've learned once you get to middle school is when to push and when not. Push a little bit, back off and be quiet, and then they come to you and tell you things. It's kind of like a dance. You take 2 steps towards them, 1 step back. 2 steps towards them.
I don't know if I fully
back.
learned that yet. But
No.
I like to know.
You like to know
I
right away.
right now.
Yeah.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
Tell me everything.
So once I get to middle school, my tactic is I plant the seeds. I say it. I let it sit. I let it marinate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm quiet. And invariably they come and tell me. If they don't, I say it again. And then if I really feel, if I'm concerned, then I push.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something about safety or whatever. And then that leads to high school, where they will talk to you about almost anything. Our kids did. We caught them in lies a couple times, and I think the biggest one, Nathan.
Only once.
He grounded.
Yeah.
But other than that, open communication, which has continued through college.
Mm-hmm.
And our older two are in their 20s. And we talk to them every day.
Mm-hmm.
Our older son was just here. Our daughter lives with us after graduating from school, saving money. So starting when they're little with those little bit of questions, it breeds this open communication. And sometimes it's a blessing and a curse, because as they get older, they start telling you everything.
Mm-hmm.
Some things you don't want to know, but they get
You
so
want to know
comfortable.
it, but you need to grow up and be able to deal with it too as a parent.
You do. And one thing I remember, there was something going on with Kaya. You were having a really hard time with it. And I said to you, look, you can either be part of this narrative or not, but it's
Mm-hmm.
happening. So it's not, this doesn't have to do with her. This has to do with you deciding if you want to be
Yeah.
on this journey with her. If you can get out of your own way.
Well, you know, when we were talking about a topic to cover, it was how we were kids raising kids. And then you might have said that in the beginning, but
Yeah.
there really is part of that, right? Is if you look back over the time, at least me personally, I know I've grown quite a bit. I had no interest, no knowledge, no experience dealing with younger kids.
Mm-hmm.
At least you have a degree in early childhood education, right?
Right.
And did nannying, and
Right.
so you kind of had an idea. I had no fucking clue.
Right.
So it's all been a thing for me.
I think that's true though for everybody. I think that every day of parenting presents a new experience and
Mhm.
a new challenge. And we've been doing this now for 27 years, and I
Yeah.
would still say we don't know what we're doing. It never ends.
No, it's constant guesswork, especially with Dylan
Constant.
now. And actually, what's really just over the top crazy is how much the world has changed
Yes.
since when Nathan was first born and where Dylan is now.
Yes.
The world's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And it felt a little bit nutty back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
It's really gone off the rails now in terms of just navigating it. And being a Gen Xer, we're from a different mold, right?
Yes.
If some of these things aren't necessarily natural or as important to us, for what's important for kids today, in terms of, say, accepting everybody. We didn't always accept everybody.
Right.
you kind
Yeah.
of have to now.
Yeah. Whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
And there's good and bad with that. No, I mean, Gen X, please. I mean, there was no politically correct anything. You
No.
said whatever you wanted. You
Yeah.
did whatever you wanted, for good or bad.
Yeah.
You know, I think that the way things have evolved is really positive in a lot of ways, but then I think there's a lot of detriment to it, and it's very stifling.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, you look at how Nathan grew up. My gosh, like you said, when you started working, it was the very beginning of the internet, to now where, you know, social media and the phones,
Mhm.
and it from our first child to our last, the internet alone, the situation with the internet grew during those years. Those
Well,
27 years is when you watched it just take off. So that alone
it's
is
even more
changed.
than just the internet. It's the internet. It's mobile phones. It's
Yeah.
apps on your phones.
But I mean all of that. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
technology. I'm using
technology,
the
yeah.
wrong word. Technology.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot I'm talking to an IT
Yeah,
guy.
okay, what you're dealing with here, yeah.
But technology. So I think that also is so interesting, is us as parents have had to grow with the technology that grew along with our children.
Well, it's an amazing thing because now we use the Find Me, or what is it? Find
my phone or something.
Yeah, the Find Me function on the
Yeah.
iPhone. I should know this.
You should.
But back in the day when the kids were older two were younger, it wasn't as easy to track them. Now we know where everybody is at all times. It's an amazing thing.
No, it's crazy. The whole thing, and it's for good or bad, right? Because the good part is that we have a family chat, and when our kids, older two, were in college, we could be in constant contact with them. We didn't feel like we were missing out on anything in their lives, and they didn't feel like they were missing out on anything at home. So when they would come home, you didn't have this feeling of needing to catch up.
Yeah,
because you'd been in constant
Yeah.
contact. So
That is an amazing thing.
it's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
So you were automatically comfortable. There was no adjusting,
Yep.
and no time was wasted catching up.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
The Find My Phone. A lot of people use Life 360. It's a
Yep.
beautiful thing.
Yep.
The negatives, of course, are the social media and all that, which we've talked about in episode 1. We talked about
Yeah.
that a bit. So, but as a parent, you know, having to learn how to deal with kids having phones, and when do kids get social media? And a lot of parents are very anti social media. But here's the tough part with that. If all the kids are communicating through Snapchat and you don't give your kids Snapchat, your kid's out of the loop.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and then some parents don't care about that. I feel that, to me, it's important that we don't cause social grief for our children because of our fears of an app. And I'm not
Mhm.
putting people down. I'm just saying that obviously the app concerns me, and I know there's been a lot of dangerous things on the app. There's a lot of
Well,
risks,
you're
but
almost even touching on a broader topic of just keeping up with the Joneses for the kids themselves,
yeah,
whether it's a hairstyle or the brand of clothing. But we had that
shoes.
too, right? When we were kids, it was, I don't even, Ocean Pacific was huge. And I
Yes.
think it was seventh grade, then Polo,
Yes.
Ralph Lauren Polo, the
Yes.
members only jackets. Remember those?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So that's always happening.
so I think for us it's that, but yes, it's the same thing, but it's now for us as parents, it's technology
Well, it's
based.
24/7. At
And
least
it's
back in the day, we had a
Mhm.
phone that was hanging on the wall. If it rang, you could ignore it. If it went
Yes.
to voicemail, you could listen to it. Now it's like everybody knows you've got a phone. Why aren't you picking up? Why aren't you
Yes.
texting me back? You know, you only have a certain amount of time there, I think, before it, you run out of excuses.
It's access 24/7. They have to each other. So if
Yeah,
you're in
yeah.
a bullying situation, that's horrendous. If you're in a boyfriend girlfriend situation, it escalates the speed of a relationship
Yeah.
10,000 times more quickly.
Exponential.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So we had to adjust to that, right? I
Mhm.
remember when phones came out and us deciding, like, we were one of the last ones to give Kaya a phone and one of the last ones to give Nathan a phone.
Mhm.
And just
I think
figuring
we
all
were
that
one of the
out.
first to give Dylan one.
Probably,
Yeah.
but so again, look how that
Yeah.
changed our parenting. So
Well, the funny part there is we've talked about this. We were kids raising kids, and we were always the young parents.
yes,
Now I don't know if we're the oldest, but we certainly are no longer the youngest
no,
anymore. We might be some of the older parents for his age.
for his age, I think we're on the older side.
On the older side, but probably not the oldest.
I don't know for the oldest, but we're
Yeah.
on the older side. Yes,
Yeah.
I would say that. It's really interesting. And for Kaya, we were like average.
That, and when you have your third and there is that age difference, some of the stuff he's able to get away with that the other two couldn't is actually kind of funny too. We take it in stride, but I think the older two hold us accountable to it.
Yeah.
Or give us
Yeah.
a hard time, right?
Oh, for sure. But again, part of that is technology. We
Mhm.
know where he is at all times.
Yep.
Like I just tracked him.
Yeah.
Like not on while we're filming this podcast, but right before the podcast, I tracked him. So there's a safety feeling in that. He also checks in. He uses Apple Pay, so I can see where he's spending his money. Again, it's more of a tracking, where with Nathan and Kaya, they didn't have that safety feature. So if they went somewhere, it was an unknown. So yes, we were more strict.
Yeah.
And we were more strict with a lot of things because of that, I would say. So that's again another way that we adjusted our parenting with this child versus with our older two.
Yeah.
And it's really just a sign of the times. And I
Yeah.
think it's important to be flexible depending on each child. Like the way you punish one child is, at least for us, is
Well-
different than how you punish your other children. Like that's why I say, as a parent, you never really know what
It-
you're doing, because every experience is going to be different, but each child is different. So you're going to
100%.
adjust. You're going
Yeah,
to adjust the way you communicate.
They're little living creatures
Mm-hmm.
with
Oh, yeah.
personalities and their own mindset, their own needs, wants,
Temperament.
desires, temperaments.
And so
Absolutely.
you're constantly evolving, constantly being challenged. The whole concept of, oh, I can't wait till they're 18 and I'm done, is non-existent. I mean, the boomers did it. The silent generation did it. I don't see some.
What do you mean? They did what?
Once you're 18, you're done. You're on your own.
Yeah.
But I think there's probably some Gen Xers that do it. But
Yeah.
overall, it doesn't end. It doesn't end. Even if they aren't living at home after high school or college.
Yeah.
You're still.
They start their careers.
Mhm.
And now it goes from, consulting on, um, say college, where I don't know, right? It all evolves. Each phase they go through in their lives. If you're close with them, there's constant parenting, coaching, advice giving, support.
Yes.
So now once they get out of college and they're into their careers, you know, it's advice on maybe a move to make it work, how to deal with a coworker, how to manage your boss, that kind of stuff.
Yes. Or should I leave this job?
Yeah.
Should I go for this? It never ends. Those
Yeah.
little questions in preschool
Yeah.
are still working at the age for our kids in their 20s. It's just the subject matter changes.
Yeah.
And there's been nothing more vital to our relationship with our children than communication. It's been the most important thing in our relationship with them. And it's what's allowed us to be so close with all three of them. So I can't stress it enough. If anyone ever asks me, because people have like about we're so close with our kids, with our older kids as they become adults and all that.
Yeah.
And I said it's the open communication,
Yeah.
100%. But again, it's not that has come easy or continues to be easy. And you and I have disagreed at times on, what we should do or say in a situation. We've butted heads. It's important to be united front, though. We've tried to do a lot of that behind the scenes and be united front when the decision's been made.
Yeah.
Somebody has to give at some point. You can't be divided trying to do this.
It's that I'm laughing because I think it was just yesterday you had told Dylan something, and then I was like, well, I gotta let mom know. He's like, wait, you're gonna tell mom? I was like, whoa, dude, we're in this together. You know, I forget what it was. It wasn't trivial.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, you have to be the united front, because if they get an inkling that they can divide you,
Yeah.
they'll work together.
Yeah.
So, but it's so far so good. We're 27 years doing this, and hopefully, as my entire family knows, I'm hoping the phase of grandparent happens in our lives, and that's going to be a whole nother experience for us, because then we're parenting our kids who are parents.
Yeah.
And get the joy of watching that, but also probably, hopefully, give them advice on when they need it in parenting.
Yeah.
And watching the way they parent.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, we have 3 Gen Z kids. We have the oldest Gen Z, our daughter's right in the middle, and our son's the youngest Gen Z.
Mm-hmm.
And I will be very curious how Gen Z parents, and I will be very curious to see the different ages in Gen Z, how the older one parents, the middle, and the younger, if that changes, because there's such a wide range.
Well, in our case, I think they will, because they're all different as much as they are similar and probably have very similar value systems. Being siblings and us being a, pretty close family, there'll be some similarities, but they're very different. Each one of them, their temperament's different. And I do think that's interesting when it comes to parenting. I wouldn't have thought that, but again, I don't know how much thought I put into this before becoming a parent. Each one is so different in how you adjust or how you approach them and adjust your communication style to them and how they react. It is wild. Well, it's an amazing thing.
And I think that the fact that you know that is because another thing that comes with open communication is it allows you to know your children authentically for who they are. They do not have to pretend to be someone else when they're around you. And our kids have had friends who act a different way around their parents because they cannot be honest with their parents.
Yeah.
You and I made a decision a long time ago that no matter what our kids are going through, whether it's middle school, high school, college, whether they're partying, whatever they're doing, we want to know, because we want to truly know them, who they are authentically. And that's allowed us to get to know them and understand they really are 3 different human beings.
Yeah, totally.
With similar values.
Yeah.
And, but we need to respect that.
Yeah.
So not easy, but the most wonderful, rewarding experience in the world. There's no question about it. And it's still continuing.
Yep.
There is no end.
Yep.
Until we die.
Yeah.
And even then I'm going to haunt them.
Yeah.
But, there is anyone who's thinking, oh, okay, so we can do this in 18 years. Sure. You're going to be able to you get a little more freedom as they get older. You do, but the parenting never ends. It never stops. If you're involved with your children and close with them, if you
Yeah,
want,
just changes.
it just
Just
changes,
changes.
but it never ends.
They do. There is this morphing to the center in some respects around you start to become more peer like in some ways, which is a fascinating thing.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed that. Where you can start to talk shop,
Yeah.
right? Professional shop or whatever it might be, financial shop or whatever those common things are. That's no
Yeah.
longer just parent child
Right.
dynamics. It's slightly more peer like.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah.
So I think that's everything for today that we wanted to talk about that, right?
I think so.
We covered it.
I think so.
That's been our experience parenting our kids so far.
So far.
So far, so good.
Yep.
So we'll see you next time.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.